Welcome here to Let's Talk Oconee. Happy Sunday evening to everyone. And this evening we're joined with none other than District 4 County Council Representative Julian Davis. Julian, glad to have you on the show with us.
I appreciate the opportunity. So it's always a joy to be invited on anybody's show and be willing to, open up and talk and answer questions and kind of talk about where the county is and where we're going.
Well, the first question I'm going to ask you tonight on the program is during the town hall meeting, you let us in a little bit of information that you have made the decision to run again for re-election.
I did. It's when I originally thought about even starting about this whole world of politics, it was probably around 2011. And, did a lot of projects around this county and grew up here, and I just wanted to kind of get involved. And, it was interesting when I kind of started talking to people about it. They were like, "What are you doing?" And this was in 2011, 2012. And I was like, well, I don't know. I think I could help out, but it's not the right time. I ended up, buying my business in 2012. So it took a lot of time and everything. And, with anything, you want to make sure that you're focused on what you're doing. So I think one of the, that was the biggest reason for waiting, and it was a good time. And it was a good time for me to run in 2016. It was obviously the council was needing some changes and everything like that. So when I sit back and think about those things and the good things that were going on in the county at that time, the things that we've been able to finish. And it wasn't that the county was doing terrible. It just, to me, I wanted to make sure that we continued to have people involved in our county government that are from here and really have a vested interest in doing this, whether it's, their kids or their business or something like that. So I kind of bring that whole perspective about, what we are trying to achieve in this county. And, there's not a part of this county that I don't know. I may have a business in Seneca, I live in Oakway, I do a lot of things in the Westminster area, I do a lot of things in the Salem area, I do a lot of things all over this county. And to me, that's an important factor of being a council person, is understanding all sides of this county. Because, I told somebody the other day, I went and saw somebody over in Salem. It took me 47 minutes to get to his house in the Troy Valley area. And I was like, you don't realize how big this county is until you do that. So, and then all the, you add up all these dirt roads and things like that. So, a year ago, I didn't know if I was going to stay on. I thought, maybe, 8 years was where I wanted to be. And some people kind of called some wind on that and talked to me. And, actually the deciding factor wasn't anybody that said anything to me. It was, my family that was very supportive. That was like, you need to finish, what you started. You got all this, work and time and the things you've done over there. You need to continue on, at least for 4 more years. So I thought I'd offer, again, with anything, you're offering yourself up to the voters for them to, at the end of the day, decide if they want you to stay in or not. And so, we've done some good stuff. As you've heard from economic development, we're in the best situation we've ever been in. I think this year we've added almost right at 300 jobs, which is huge. A lot of counties are having some issues with that. Our OEA and Jamie Gilbert's doing a phenomenal job over there. We've got a lot of fish on the line. So we're doing some fantastic things just on the economic development standpoint. We had some updates in council from Parks and Recreation, the investments that we're doing in our parks. And, I'm a big quality of life guy. I don't hide that.
Right.
I'm a big believer that, we pay we pay taxes in this county just like every other county does. I'm a believer that quality of life is what people are after and what people want. And it's not spending god-awful amounts of money. It's making sure that we're, number one, keeping up with what we have. And that was my biggest thing with the Parks and Recreation, millage that we set aside and council set aside that was designated from Parks and Recreation. So just like this year's budget where they tried to come in and say, oh, well, we're doing this millage for this and we're moving this here. This stuff has been done before, but it's actually been, put into place for that. So for our capital vehicle replacement plan, just as you can see in the last council meeting, I think we bought 8 or 9 different vehicles, sheriff and fire.
I wanted to ask you a question concerning that, and I think it was Don that brought this up in Tuesday night's council meeting, and you echoed the same thing. We understand, though, that you have to go through state purchasing or state contract, which you're allegedly supposed to get the cheapest prices on vehicles. But wouldn't it be better if you could go to your friends in the county in which you're wanting to buy your vehicles to keep that money inside the county?
Right. And you know, the state kind of controls the world of contracts. You know, when everybody says the state government doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing, they really do, because the state, there's certain purchase orders that have to go into place for these companies, Love Chevrolet being one, and I forget the other one that was the Dodge dealership that came on there. So they actually have to put in place to where they're getting these state vehicles, and they're very specific vehicles. Most of them have a rubber floor mat, or like our police cruisers. The new ones, if the officer jumps out of his car, the car won't move forward until he comes back in with his keypad on there. So that's a lot of new features that they have on there. And those are, and the sirens and different things, those are all installed there, and it's a whole system.
So it's ready to go. It's a turnkey. It's a turnkey operation.
So used to, even on the state purchase, you'd buy a vehicle and had to go somewhere and all this stuff like this. So, you know, the state contracts, everybody can apply. So if, you know, our local places wanted to go on here and supply the state contract, they could. The majority of them, if you've ever been down, I've actually been to Love Chevrolet, because when I was down there in Columbia at a board meeting, I wanted to go down there and see, you know, hey, they have an entire lot, and it's just a lot of, at that time was white vehicles. Now they've gone through there and decided that they're, you know, you see a lot of vehicles that are the same color of what you're driving today, the blacks, the grays, and things like that. So when they actually did that, because it's actually been, number one, it's better for resale. Number two, it's a whole lot easier to kind of fit in than when the old Crown Vic days, when everybody would hit the brakes anytime you saw a Crown Vic. So, you know, if your grandparents or whatever bought a Crown Vic, you're like, you just bought a police car. So, you know, but it's those things that I see that, you know, when these things come up, if you look at the purchase price for some of those, it's well below. Like, people are like, man, I can't even buy a truck for that. So you're talking about a truck that's on, you know, on any lot around here is probably 65, 66. The state purchase is like 50, 51. And those come prepared with all of our kits and everything like that. Again, some of the safety stuff that we had on there. And keeping our officers in well-used cars. You see some of the ones coming off 170, 180. And I mean, I've got, you know, 2 cars in my family that's got 180, 190,000 miles on them. But at the end of the day, I'm not trying to chase somebody down or go into a call or anything like that. So I think, you know, when we put that in place, the number one reason to put that capital vehicle replacement funding in place, as well as the plan. The plan had always been there, and it was like, well, we're going to buy this year and this that year, and there was no planning that would take place. And the problem is, you'd end up with one year you try to buy 13 vehicles, or you know, if you talk to your guys up at the motor pool, they're trying to keep these things running. So, you know, there's things that we have done that are putting this millage in place, just like this year, that actually end out saving us money in the long run. So, you know, it's probably one of the next conversations we want to talk about, just a little bit in the budget. So this kind of dives right back into it. So, you know, the town hall, there was a ton of budget ton of budget questions, and I got that because it was totally different budget season than what we've ever had.
We're
before.
accustomed to.
And so I look back to, you know, the first year that, you know, council changed, and it was all, you know, transparency. We're not doing this, all this. We want to read all this out. We want to have all these meetings. To when the second year, and I understood, and I took what they said, and as well as Mr. Elliott, and we added a lot more budget meetings. And if you go back and look at those, there were some concerns I had in the budget meeting, because I would ask a question. We have this budget meeting and nobody's asking any questions. Like, John and me are talking, we're doing some things. This is preparation for the budget. It doesn't start. I mean, it's this whole false world that I've seen out here that is supported by a group that says that the budget is just rubber stamped. And it's not. The budget's built, you know, January, February, March. They act like we build the budget in June when Amanda presents. No. This thing is done.
Well, you
5,
already have
6,
budget.
7 months.
You already have budget meetings that start, basically you have the conversation in February, March, April, then you start having your public hearings when you go into June, and then on the third reading towards the end of June, because by state law, those budgets have to be ready by July 1.
And I think that as an administrator, the administrator looks for guidance. Any administrator, doesn't matter who it is, where they are, they're looking for guidance from their council members. So we have our strategic plan meeting where everybody talks about what's important to them, and then she works on a way on, here's how I think we can fund this. That's not a rubber stamp. Then as a council, you get to decide and say, we're going to fund this or we're not going to fund this. So, you already know what next year's budget's going to be within a couple $1 million, depending on what council decides to do. So, when we started this whole process in February and March, we were all building it together. At that time, there was 4 members of council.
Correct.
But if we go back to last year's budget, all 5 members of council was on there at that time. We're going through all this stuff, having all these budget meetings, and I just asked the question, why, if you don't like what the budget is, tell us what you don't like. Tell us so we can do it. Well, I will. Why does it matter? And I think Glenn was very clear. And
Yes.
I can't remember if that was last year or this year. He says, why does it matter to you what I think about the budget if you're just going to pass it anyway? Okay. I don't think that comment came from me this year, because my whole thing was trying to understand where the budget is at and where the budget's heading. So when he says that, I kind of look back and go, okay, well, as long as, and like this year, that would have been, the 3 of them, in my opinion, would have been able to construct and do whatever they wanted to on the budget. So, but there wasn't a lot of conversation in budget meetings. And it's not that we need to sit up there and talk for 4 or 5 hours, but the whole reason why we have constructive criticism of the budget is to build a constructive budget. And so there's never been a budget that's rubber stamped that I've ever seen, because as an administrator, if they're just going to build, then that goes back to the old supervisor role.
There's no need for county council. It goes back to what it used to be.
So what is true in the budget is we don't get up there with a daggum axe over our shoulder and try to chop off 10 pages of the budget, because we've already tried to make sure that as we move forward through the budget process, that we're developing a budget that can have minimal changes as we move forward to first, second, and again, what I've tried to do is not have changes between the second and third reading. So everybody was well aware of that, and that's what kind of threw me in a loop this time. At the end of the day, the budget this year, I'll give some credit. They worked really hard on it. Matt spent a lot of time, and I know he did. And I've said this to you before. When I got on council, it is a lot. And I think I've heard some conversations from Don in the last council meeting where he was talking a little bit about, these presentations are really helpful in me understanding, the rock quarry presentation, all this stuff. This is really helpful in helping me learn. Well, every year on council, you're learning and you're growing in knowledge. Nobody sits at home and really dissects what we do as a government entity. Nobody knows, I shouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people don't know what the state does and what Washington does. You hear about it from a media source or something like that. So to me, that's why the number one media source that we have is the council meeting itself. It's not your opinion. It's not my opinion. It's not a newsletter. It's not a group of 5 people's opinion. It is really, you can sit there and listen to it, and then you can make your own thing. So I think that's where communication at council meetings probably needs to improve a little bit more. And again, one of the reasons why I decided to run is because what, in my opinion, the 3 council people that are on there that used to kind of feel like I was kind of tearing down the county are now sitting here going, wow, we got a job to do. And it's not what I thought it was, because this job is very complex. I mean, Don spoke one time and said how complex the budget is, and it is. It takes a lot of work outside of meeting with certain individuals like Amanda. Christy Hubbard does a good job of kind of going through the millage. And if you're sitting there flying by the seat of your pants, or you're following somebody, you don't know when you may have to pull them out of the fire. And that's my only challenge to anybody, whether they're sitting on this council or they're thinking about running or city council. If you're following a person or a couple of people and you're not doing the work yourself, how do you know when it's time to pull that person that you think's the leader out of the fire? Because that's what we were up against in this budget, that when it came down to it at the end of September, after that budget fiasco that started in June, it was I got to actually do a job now, because there was a lot of phone calls that people made. I got phone calls, what are we going to do about this? And you know, it's very, when it sits in your lap, as it did for Matt at this time, he realized he had a job to do. And maybe some of the people that were leading him led him down a path that he didn't like, and I'll give him some props on going. Now, I wish it was in June. No budget's perfect. Not any budget I passed, John passed, Paul passed, or anything like. No budget is perfect. All of them improve. But if this budget had been done in June, May or June, and it could have. There's no reason why what happened in June should have happened, because that was unfair to the citizens, it was unfair to the people that got the raises, and it was unfair to the people that got the raises in September. If this budget had been done properly with plenty of time in June, the budget would have been almost about, I guess, $1.6 million so higher, but it would have included full pay for all those officers in there. So
what you're saying right now is that we actually have a half-funded mandate.
There's some 2/3 and stuff on the salaries.
So if it had been done the way that just the last month has worked out, in the long run, Oconee would have been better. Things would have got the money. The county would, the employees would have got their pay, and there wouldn't be this.
You wouldn't been jerking people around.
Right, and
because that's why every single person, including me, and including several employees, because you just don't jerk people around with money. And when you're out there going to meetings, not me, and you're telling people you're going to get your raise, and then people are telling me that these people are telling them at meetings that they're getting raises.
But here's the other thing.
And then they don't. That's what causes this.
Here's the other thing we need to go back and look at. The conversation had started as in June, we're going to cut the budget. Mm-hmm. We're going to cut the budget.
Now that conversation started before they ever even got on council.
Well, yes, I will agree with that. That was
the whole reason.
We're going to cut the budget. We're going to be transparent, and we're going to do line by line itemization. We're going to take a look at everything line by line.
And this cost basis budget or whatever that they had. And
so when we come right down to it, Julian, at the end of June, everything changed on the last reading, but then the comment was made by David Root that this potentially could be illegal the way it was done. That's where things really took a nosedive, that the citizens thought, wait a minute, what are you doing? It kind of felt like something was being swept under the rug.
Well, it was. It truly was. When you take a budget that that's been working on by all council
and you've had two readings of the budget already,
and you've had all these budget meetings, and here is your budget and it's laid out, and then you don't. It's okay to change certain parameters of it, but what was said is you changed the entire complex budget. Mm-hmm. This budget does not resemble this budget that you presented to the people saying. And so when I had people come to me and said, oh, we want to challenge this, I said, there's not a point, because okay, great, you challenge it. I said, it's fixing to change anyway. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, you can't do the budget that we just did. There's unfunded mandates. We knew that, like solid waste, listen, solid waste, if people aren't paying attention to the amount of trash going into the C&D landfill and the amount of trash that we're shipping over to Georgia, this household trash is what we're shipping. C&D is all our construction stuff. if you're not paying attention to what that is, the cost associated with our trash went up astronomically. And that was a new contract from Homer, Georgia. Actually, we were glad to have it. It was very fair contract, but that was like $900,000. So when you went in here and slapped this, oh, we're going to cut this budget to 60 million or 50 million, they might as well have made it 30 million because they weren't going to be able to do it. Because when you got things that you got to fund, and you've made all these promises that they know they made, and we know that they made, because I heard about it, and in all honesty, I'm not against that, but you don't promise people something, especially when you start talking about people's money. And I don't think a council person should look at staff and say, hey, I'll promise you we'll get you this, or promise you. And that's what I heard. And then you do that, and then you create just a complete storm.
You do.
And then what's happened is your administrators, your sheriff, your head of the departments are trying to mop it up and hold it together and say, just hang out, because it's going to be okay once they see that they can't do this. And that's exactly what happened. So we literally went through and reconstructed a budget. The only problem is it's like every 5 minutes things were moving. Mm-hmm. And so there was no reason to go in here and challenge it, even if I said, hey, I'm going to challenge this budget, because I knew, and John knew, at the end of the day, the budget would look similar to what we had planned out. It's actually, in all honesty,
it's
more.
It's a little more by 800,000, I think.
Would be, it's not that much, but it would be way more than that if they had funded it as they would in June. Now, there's always, I continue to hear the sideline of, hey, we have open positions, so we always have that money that we can use for this and that. Well, but what happens if you fill the positions? Then what? Are we going to put $0 back in our savings account? And being a part of a business and a household, everybody knows that there's things that come up. I mean, let's just go back to 2020 in the world of tornado. I was chairman of county council at that time, and I came to work around between 4:30, 5:30, somewhere around that in the morning, to try to make sure that we had everything in order, and we were doing all this stuff. The cost associated with the tornado, that's great. Everybody says, oh, you got reimbursed by FEMA. Seneca's still waiting on their money. We're still waiting. We may never see that money. But it doesn't mean that you can't just, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have money to help with tornado disaster. We can't do that. We don't have money to help people do the things that they need to do. So that's not a choice. And so, luckily, just as you've seen with the audit reports and stuff that's came out, you've seen that the county's in great financial shape.
Yeah, I was going to mention that in a little bit. I mean, I was blown away, and understand that everything in this report, as far as the financials, was done on the previous council, which would include you, Julian, John, and Paul Kane. Yep,
Mr. Hart and Wayne.
And Wayne. It goes back to Wayne.
It goes back to Wayne. Mm-hmm. And I look back to go, these budgets that passed 3-2 a lot of times, and people go, does that not irritate you? And I said, no, it really doesn't irritate me that, when our budgets would pass 3-2, because, this is the first 5-0 budget we've had in quite some time. And it's not, I don't love the budget, but it's okay. There's some things I would do differently, but at the end of the day, I agree with 75 to, actually I'd probably say I agree with 85% of it. So, I'm appreciative that they got in there, they did the work, and they saw, well, I can't do what I would, because it was very worrisome as a citizen. I'm still, even though I'm a council person, I'm still a citizen.
I think we all were.
To sit back and go, where are we headed? Because if we're going to start cutting, what are we going to start cutting? Because the budget, you hear about the budget growth, and I've said this on here before, and this whole interview is to not in any way, I'm actually, in all honesty, feel like I'm trying to be constructive and actually giving some giving some credit where credit's due. That we're overspending, we're doing this stuff, the budget's going up and up and up, but the budget's going up in public safety and fire tremendously. Well, why is that? Well,
growth.
First off, it's growth. Second off, it's because those are two of the most expensive things for any county to run. And so, again, when they got in there, and they want to bash us before they even step in the door and say, we're going to, cut this and we're going to run lean and mean. And I was like, but you don't even know. Well, now they know, and what changed? You saw it in the budget. Mm-hmm. It can't be 60 million. Next year's budget's going to be higher because you got to fund the rest of the sheriff's office salaries. And I'll give some big props to Mike Crenshaw was on the phone with me, and we were just talking a little bit, and he's like, I'm fixing to fill some of the last remaining positions that I have open, and that is because of the money that was put forth by all council. We can say Matt proposed it. That's great. I don't have any problem with that. I'll give credit where credit's due. That money that was proposed and put out there, that pay is headed in a good direction. And so he's literally going to have a fully staffed police. Okay. Now you got to work on your compaction. And you got to work on your 5 and your 10 and your 15-year guys. And I spoke about that a little bit as we continue to move forward. Is the people that really run this county are not the people that come to work on day one. Your 5 and 10 and 15-year people are training those people to take their place. And
your 5 or 10 or 15 is your frontline people, right, that a lot of these people meet for the first time in the public.
Right. And Amanda Brock's our administrators brought up some great things about you'll need to pay special attention to the amount of people retiring in the next 5 years. You got to come up, because these people that have worked for this county for their life are doing the jobs of 5 people. Mm-hmm. And they are phenomenal individuals, and some of them are department heads, and some of them just run a tractor. But they do amazing work for us and have stayed and kept their head down and tried to ignore some of the stuff going on, because they're like, this is county government. It is what it is. Some people say they're going to do this, and they get in there and they can't even do close to it. But we're capturing growth, and that's what this budget did. This was a ability to capture the growth that this county's headed down, which is a good thing, because if you want to sit here and you want to come in here and say you're going to cut all these taxes and stuff, you're not going to. You're not going to, because if you do, you're going to let growth run and control you. And then growth is going to become your council. And then what are you going to do when your developers control your council? Because if you pay any attention to a lot of places in the state,
that's a good point.
These people that are big pro huge growth have got on there, and they allow things to happen that most people, and tax breaks and different things like that. And it's not really close to us, but it's some places that I've watched to where they can't even, they're having 4 and 5 meal tax increases that is not even good enough to even cover what they have. So the schools can't take it. Our schools are still at 10,000, which is great. That's a whole nother world that I'm not going down today, but our schools are at 10,000 today, which is good, which means what? What are we going to have to do? What do we have coming in? We have our retirees coming in. So what are we going to have to make sure we have? Medical. Mm-hmm. Okay. So our fire calls, our medical calls are higher than they ever have been. Mm-hmm. Do you think those are going down? Nope. Those are going up.
No, not anytime soon.
So medical calls are continuing to go up. So we need to make sure that we're looking at that side as well. So, and costs are going up. Just merely pumping diesel in a tractor, tires, everything like that. So, we've put more money back in our budgets. During my time on here, we've never spent 100% of it. When I got on council, some of those budgets, if there was $700,000 left over, it was used to fund the next year's budget. So the next year's budget was, do you think that next year's budget went down? No, it went up.
No, it went up.
So the next year's budget was this rolling thing of, we're not putting 2 dimes back into the fund balance, and all we're doing is waiting on one thing to happen, and the county's going to be in some shambles. And I can guarantee you that if the county would have had the small amount of money in the fund balance and hadn't have been doing the things that we had been doing under my leadership, John's leadership, and Paul's leadership to get our things back in order, this interest rate coming on this bond would be a point higher. Well, what does that mean? Millions of dollars would have gone out to this. Now, whatever your opinion is on that is a whole nother thing, but our financial audit of the county was phenomenal. And it wasn't because of the 5 people that are sitting up there now, including me. It was those that were there last year and the year before and the year before that. This didn't happen overnight. And so, I want to look at that to say that, your decisions that you're making today affect things 3 years down the road.
That's right.
And so I believe what I have seen in a turn-in council in the last really 2 or 3 months, they're understanding that this is a big boy job. And we're all going to make mistakes. The hope is that you don't make a mistake when you vote. You try to do all your research before so you don't cause this, because it makes this job not just hard on yourself as a council person, but it makes it really hard on the administration and that leadership team. I can't fathom what happened in administration and finance during literally 9 months of this year working on a budget. Mm-hmm. And that's not all that they do. Some people are like, well, that's what she does. And I'm like, no. She doesn't just do a budget. The hope is that the budget's done. Every day is a part of the budget. And we've had budget amendments and stuff like that, so that's nothing new. But we've never had to reconstruct a budget from the end of June to September.
Yeah.
And hope to God we never do again, because coming back up in January, we're going to start back on the budget process again.
Over.
And so with anything, this council, Matt and Don, Glenn's been on there as long as I have, are learning that this is a huge job. And again, I've made mistakes. I'm trying to learn and continue as we move forward, to make sure that we're growing our tax base without growing the actual taxes that you and I are paying. And that to me is really, really important as we move forward, is because, name one thing in your life financially that has been stable in the last 3 years.
Nothing.
There's not. And so if you go back and you look at what people are paying in taxes, it's pretty stable around this county, unless you've purchased a new home or something like that. That's changed a little bit. But, Oconee County is still a very affordable place to live. So just want to touch base on that.
Okay.
I think the other question that I had that came forward is, how am I affected by different things that happen, and the other side of that's kind of, I guess, against the world. And I focus on things that matters. There's always going to be differing opinions. There's always been people to come to council that are just constantly there that have a certain opinion, and it's always seems like it's derogatory. But at the same time, is there some truth in what they're saying? That's always been me. And, I go back and you got, some of those that spoke every council meeting that are no longer with us. And I'm like, what's the end game? Was he trying to change? And some of the stuff he wasn't wrong about. And that was Mr. Barnett kind of talked about, don't you touch my property. Don't you tell me what to do. And I don't disagree with what he's saying, because I don't want to, somebody asked me what District 4 wants. I said, District 4 really kind of wants to be left alone. We don't want these heavy zoning restrictions on there where somebody can tell you how to park a trailer or how to do this or how to do that. Or, I think we all know that we can, plant a tree on our property line, but what color tree, all this stuff. Nobody wants to go through that stuff. You have
different demographics throughout the county, and the way the county is set up now, you have 5 different districts, but within each of those districts, you have different geographic locations. Like, for example, District 5 is a prime example, Glen Hart's district. You've got a middle right there of farmland, then you've got lake over here with Chickasaw Point, then now you've got the other side with Clemson and all of this development going on. So you have the different demographics from Mountain Rest to Tomasi, and then from Salem all the way to Bountyland. So you have different geographic locations. Well, I don't want to tell somebody over in Oakway of what they can do with their property, because that's rural and that's predominantly going to be farm, and that's the country. But yeah, there need to be some sort of development standards, is what I like to call them. They're not zoning, but they're development standards. Let's be honest, potentially this 1,900 something new home development coming, think Mr. Elliott's correct. It's going to be a disaster over there, as at the way it's set up now with the county.
Well, and what was brought up in the last council meeting, Mr. Elliott kind of brought up about development standards, and I made a statement. We really don't have development standards because we have, there's some subdivision rules of how they have to apply, but as in the council saying do this, do that, that's really not there. There's just those setbacks and all that stuff like that. Mr. Hart kind of brought that up, that there's DOT setbacks, there's this and that, and there is those, but what Mr. Elliott's trying to do, and what I was trying to talk about is, what does the citizens want? Because I don't want to control a home as it is now. There's honestly, I could care less what you do at your home as long as it's legal. And if it's illegal, I guess you're doing it inside your. I don't know. It's kind of like if
right.
people weren't doing illegal stuff, we wouldn't have any cops. So that would cut a couple $1 million out of there, and I'm sure Sheriff Crenshaw would appreciate that. He solved crime. So but I'm sitting here when we're talking about these developments coming in here, and people are complaining about, well, I don't like the way these homes looked all stacked on top of each other, and you see somebody puts on there a new subdivision coming in there, everybody goes nuts, and then you see the people going, well, that land was for sale, you could have bought it, and they're like, I wish it would stay a farmland. Well, I don't disagree with that. It'd be nice if this area was going to be rural forever, and I would really like it to, but we all know it's not. So what Mr. Elliott's trying to bring up is, it's like, these subdivisions that are coming in, there's not a single tree in sight. It's house, 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 house. There needs to be a way to kind of keep some kind of green space and everything in there. And I think most developers would probably agree with the things that he's talking about in there. The lighting stuff was brought up. I actually brought the lighting stuff 2 years ago because everybody was putting in these lights that were just shining all the way up. And if you look from my house into Seneca, you see the nice pink glow.
Well, you got the light pollution. Now,
I will say that after Seneca has changed all their lights to the new LEDs that you see around here after 2020, that glow literally, I don't want to say it disappeared, but it's half, or probably more than half, 3/4 of what it was. So when you look at that standpoint, the small things that you can do while still keeping your area safe and lit, like subdivisions like to do and like the cities like to do, actually make a huge thing. And so that's the things that John's trying to bring. These are just minimal changes that he's kind of bringing up. And I remember getting phone calls from people saying, you're going to tell me what color to paint my fence and stuff like this, because there was information that was put out on newsletters and little Facebook sites that said, do you want these people controlling your house? Ain't nobody trying to control
Or they're
house.
Coming to take your property.
Yeah, we're coming to take your property. Yeah, and junkyard ordinance is a perfect example that's been thrown around for 3 years.
And it's coming back to coming back to the county.
Well, it was interesting. It went through planning commission for 3 years. I'm like, do we not have something more important to work on in this county than a daggum junkyard? So it came from there, got put back up into, I guess, planning and economic development with Matt Durham, Glenn Hart, and Don Mize. I used to be on that, and I got removed from that, which is fine. I'll let them do it and learn some things, and that's good. Gives me some more time to do other things. And it was the planning commission recommended no further changes. Okay, that meant the planning commission's done with it. It's sent to you as a council, and really should have came into council for council to talk about. Well, then it got referred back down to the planning commission in that meeting, not this recent meeting, but in, I guess it was March, got referred down to the planning commission. No changes got made on it, and it got referred back up. So I think it was a little bit confusion. And Mr. Mize is the chairman of that he misunderstood that when the planning commission said, we don't recommend anything further, that means that the planning commission's done with it. So it's in the hands of us as a council to either kill it or approve it or make some changes that we think. So, when this whole thing came up and it's like, oh, we don't need to grandfather these places in, I'm sitting there looking at this going, so we're going to put an ordinance in place, and I'm not even talking about junkyards, I'm talking about, let's just talk about business period. And we know there's probably 15 of this style business, not just junkyards, but any other business. And we're going to pass a mandate or ordinance that's going to require them to spend let's say at least $50,000. If this county passed an ordinance on me in my world of insurance and said, you got a year to do this, it's going to cost you about $50,000, have a good day, I'd be standing right up there saying, no. I disagree with the ordinance. I disagree with not having, I think there's some things that need to be made. I know people, I have an issue with some of the junkyards as well, but obviously it's needed because the amount of junk that goes there. I think there's a better way for them to improve their intake process. I think there's a safer way. I think they need to get the stuff off the right of way. I think there's a better way to make it look more aesthetically pleasing. But at the same time, we're not the only county with junkyards.
All right.
And there is all kinds of junkyards, and I hate to use the word like C&D landfills or dump sites all over this county. So if we start going in here, are you willing to put somebody, are you willing to find, and this is the world ordinances, and this is the way I am with ordinance, are you willing to find somebody? Are you willing to send somebody to jail over your ordinance? Mm-hmm. And this comes back to the world of the pet stuff when we were talking about pet licensing fees. I'm like, well, if you pass an ordinance that requires me to do something, I'm probably going to do it. You're going to do it. But the people that we're actually trying to get to do it,
they're not
they ain't
going
going
to
to do it.
No.
So what are you going to do then? You going to lock them up?
Take your dogs away, lock them up?
You're going to take the dogs away? If the dog's not in any issue, you know, and I look at this stuff to go like, these are those mandates that what is really important in this county. And I agree that junkyards don't look wonderful. They cause some issues, but obviously there's a need there. And I know a lot of junkyard owners that I talk to about what can we do to make this look a little bit better, a little bit safer and things like that. I don't know of any, maybe I've missed something and it's passed through. I don't know of anybody that's died in a junkyard in Oconee County. I haven't read a story where a kid got locked in a car at a junkyard and died. Maybe I missed something.
The only thing that I know is that there was reports that we've had some homeless people sleeping in cars in certain junkyards. I do know
and
that.
I would agree with that. I mean, there's homeless people sleeping in the woods. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I mean, there's homeless people sleeping if there's a abandoned home. So, you know, but when it comes down to the world of safety, you know, what that people are complaining about, that the original interpretation of this junkyard is, oh, we're going to put these fences up. I mean, have you priced fences to go around? You know, I think the ordinance said 8-10 feet fence that goes around the top of it.
It's
so,
not cheap.
You know, those are the things that I look at to go, are we really going to enforce that? You know, or are we looking at, hey, as you move forward with that? You know, so the biggest issue we got is a way to get rid of the cars. So maybe the county needs to come up with a thing and say, hey, you know, maybe we need to come in and with all these guys and say, hey, we're going to rent a compactor, bring it in there, ship these cars off. Maybe that's something that we could do that would be helpful to them to move some of this stuff out of the area. But, you know, just for any business, and I'm not just touching on the junkyard stuff, but any business, if you're going to pass a mandate that's going to require a business owner to spend $50,000 to $75,000, you know, as a business owner, I mean, you know, your stuff. We're going to pass something in the county that says that, oh, your license fee is now $70,000 to do this. What you going to do? You're going to be up there in your public comment session every 5 minutes, and not only that, you're probably going to come sue us because it's an unfair mandate on the way that you do business. So if nobody else is doing it, you know, and I'm not telling us to be, you know, we don't need to be different from everybody else, but you got to be careful with what you're doing. And, you know, when that came to council, this was exactly the same thing I was going to say is, you know, is this something that we're really going to enforce? Because if we're not going to enforce it, then why are we spending 3 years? Why are we wasting anybody's time sitting on there? If development standards are interesting to people and everybody's headed in that direction of there, that's where we need to be talking about it. So, you know, homeless, you know, you brought up homeless. It's a good time to talk about that. I was actually on the phone talking about that situation today. You know, people are a little concerned with, you know, homelessness. And, you know, as you know, I've been part of this, trying to find a solution, and we have some solutions actually since '06. So, I don't know when I became the chairman of our daily rest, but it was probably at least eight years ago, but I've served on that board since '06 to really dive into the issue of homelessness in Oconee County. And, with our programs, with our daily rest, and not only just in the shelter, but outside the shelter, we'll have between 40 and 50 people involved in some type of program that we have on there. So, but people are like, oh, I still see homeless. I said, oh, just because you see somebody walking or sleeping, I know we're not always in Oconee County, you're not used to that. You don't see the homeless like you see in New York where they're sitting there with sleeping bags.
Right.
But just because somebody's walking on the street or they're standing holding a sign doesn't make them homeless. And there is a certain percentage of them, the Walmart is the largest one that we know of now, that are allowed to stay there because there is no rules. And so they don't want to work. It's kind of their little common area that they're going in there and hanging out together. And that's a hard group to try to figure out. Every now and again we've got a couple that'll come out of that situation. That actually one last week that came in there, staying with us now, she's doing phenomenal. Working, she was just tired of it because when it gets cold, guess what happens? This is the time that you really start seeing
they're looking for shelter,
trying to make a change. Yep. Because to get out of this during the summertime, we're just like Florida. Yeah. It's okay to live outside, but if you follow county politics, you heard about the money that the county helped the sheriff get for the drug rehab with Orr's program. Mm-hmm. Ashley Williams, Jim Corey, and their program doing a phenomenal job of really diving in there and going after the drug addicted and really working with that group to keep them from either whether they are homeless, but to keep them from getting back into homeless, or to keep those that are the younger group that is affected by that. They also have programs for that. So phenomenal job by that group. There's so many nonprofits around here, and I made this statement down the phone to my friend that we was concerned about this. So there's so many nonprofits around here, Ripple of One, Oars, Our Daily Rest, that are really doing everything they can to give these people an avenue of success. And these churches have all these programs, and they're interested in really helping these people, that if you're homeless, it's because it's a choice. Mm-hmm. And people can say whatever they want to say about it. If you're homeless in Oconee County right now, you made the choice, because we have programs all throughout this county and people want to help them. And that's, I've spent a lot of time and a lot of my money making sure we're doing the best thing we can for them, and have definitely really created, avenues for people to change their life.
Before we run out of time here on the interview, this is Julian Davis, of course. He is District 4 County Councilman for the Oconee County Council. I want to ask you the big question with the elephant in the room concerning Sewer South. Mm-hmm. And the bonding. Would you, in your words, explain why you feel that doing this bond is good for Oconee?
Well, so Sewer South, just going all the way back to the original connection that was finishing up when I first came on council to Golden Corner
Commerce Park,
which is on 59.
Right. People
call it the Hayfield, whatever else, the Reed Head Farm, all of that stuff. That was finishing up, and I think finished it up at the end of 2017, 2018. There were some final touches on that to make where you could actually build in that park. There were some grading talks there, and there's some grading talk to OITP, which is the Highway 11 part where Horton and all that stuff is. The decision was made by council to grade the Highway 11 part because of the education part of it that we were working with Tri-County Tech. So we ended up grading that instead of Golden Corner. Obviously, if you look at that, that was the right move to make. And it proved that grading a park definitely changes everything. And from what I noticed, the number one thing, if you're ever going to buy a piece of land, you better grade it or get ready for economic development, because topography is one of the number one things that these companies look at. and I'm trying to do a roundabout way to come back into here of why I was for sewer to exit 4, but not necessarily all for sewer to exits 1 and 2.
Well, I think a lot of the citizens, and I want to clarify this, we actually do agree on exit 4 because we understand the dynamics of that property around there. And you're talking about the topographic area. That's developable property around exit 4.
So, and that was there was a development now, and I guess everybody knows it's Blue Ridge now, and Blue Ridge has stated that it's Blue Ridge. Purchased property up there for economic development in order to run sewer there. Worked with us on a partnership to pay us a specific portion of the sewer, which was great. I think it was about right around $5 million at that time to run sewer to there. And so that was from Golden Corner at that time, running all the way to exit 4 to create sewer on that side of things. That was prior council. Made a commitment to that because they agreed to that because I think it was going to cost us around $3 million to do that at the time.
Right.
And so we could have either used fund balance or in this next budget. And then council changed, as you see what we have now, and it quickly went to exit 1 and 2 and away from 4 rather than 4, 2, and 1. Now it was not just council. There was a state grant that was given to help get sewer to exit 1. So that's where exit 1 came into play because of the money, which was really, I think, between that and some ARPA money, the taxpayers' money was a very small portion to get it down there. At that time, I thought it was $6 to $7 million to do. It was set exit 2 and 1. Well, then when the drawing comes out, it doesn't even get to exit 2. It goes down a gravel road before and actually bypasses exit 2 because of the sewer engineers that decided that that's where it needed to go rather than go to 2. So my question was, why are we not even going to 2 anymore? Because that's where the money was, and that's where I thought the land was. And I was told that, well, that was more difficult and there to do that. So we were at like $8 million then. The final number comes back and now we're at
12 million.
And then we put $1.5 million of contingency on there, which is not enough in my opinion. And I know this group that's doing the construction's doing a great job. And this is very, very tough terrain. I was down there the other day just kind of looking around because, to be honest, I haven't gone out there and scoped and said, here, because I wanted to see after they start grading, this is some tough terrain they're going through.
But see, we haven't got down to the lake yet. And that's the other thing.
Well, so the boring group, is not this group. This group is obviously not the boring group. So this goes to another group that they have that's going to start the bore, which is really was my big concern. And if anybody listened to me on council, I said, hey, you don't know what you're going to run into until you're going under there.
All you have to do is ask Duke Energy what they ran into on Lake Kiwi. And took 3 different companies, and the project went way over budget.
Right, and when you look at the lovely blue granite that we have that our rock quarry sells so much of, that line it kind of runs in that area, and I'm not some genealogist or genealogist, I don't know, whatever. The joys of live radio, geologists to say that, because they may run through there, they may slide in like butter, and we're great and we're good to go. We may even get money back. Hey, who knows? But it's like, I look at the amount of land that is developable around there, and I hope, somebody keeps bringing up Sanctuary Point. And the Corps of Engineers owns that land, the big peninsula.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Behind the Welcome Center.
I hope to goodness somebody comes out there and wants to develop that, because why else did we run all that sewer there?
Well, it's not Army Corps that owns that. It's the state of South Carolina behind the Welcome Center. That state PRT owns that property.
Right.
Yeah, that's where Sanctuary Point was going to go.
The Corps is the one that decides what happens around the lake.
Right.
So I hope that area develops, because if not, what did we run all the sewer for? So coming back to that funding went through, I made a statement in there and I actually pulled off for a vote just to try to say, hey, we're at 8 million. All of a sudden we're at 12. We need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit and look at this and see financially if this is there. And
oh Lord,
I think I was the only one. I got smacked around a little bit and just kind of laughed at it because I'm like, since when do we not pump the brakes on a $4 million change?
Yeah.
You know, we're out here and get a little airport change order coming in there, and people are screaming out,
screaming and hollering. But this they did.
And this there was no. It was, well, no, we got to do it no matter what. And I'm going like, but we better watch it, because my question is could we not have gone back and talked to the state and go, hey, y'all want this? Because this is actually goes as far up to the governor's office. And I was actually at a talk with him at Clemson University, and he talked about getting sewer to 85 corridors. Okay, so this was in his strategic plan, which is where this comes down to, that he wants sewer at every single interstate exit all throughout South Carolina that is financially feasible. So that's where all of this stuff comes into play. So the reason why we should have done exit 4, because the economic development that would occur at exit 4,
yeah, I agree,
would pay for the sewer running to 1 and 2. However, when the grant was done, the grant had to have a known business, hence the Welcome Center. So the Welcome Center was used to apply for the grant through the state to state that this is economic development. Now, are we going to have a new Welcome Center? Are we going to have
the big waterfall?
I mean, I've heard a lot of different things. I think we need to do one of those little parks that you can get on your wakeboards and, kind of.
I think we need to put a dump truck and get a big old cart of Dole Arthur Cannon.
But yeah, but we talk about that, and I'd be more concerned, instead of a new Welcome Center, how about a new bridge crossing over 85
how
right there?
How about the county roads or the state roads paved?
I chipped a tooth coming across that bridge coming into Georgia.
Are you serious?
Yeah, and I don't have great teeth. So, but I say those things to joke around, but the state needs to pay attention. And I know if you've done some research in the road world like I have, these bridges on 85
horrible,
are deemed to be replaced. Now, how they're going to replace them, how they're going to do all this stuff is and what's the cost associated with that? Because they want boat traffic to be able to go under these bridges.
Well, on Hartwell, you know as well as I do, if the lake is full, you can't get a pontoon under some of these bridges.
You can't get a pontoon under some of the bridges. So this is another strategic plan that's coming in through the state, talking about bridges, because it's not just in Oconee County, it's all across the state. So, the gas tax is helping out, there's things helping out. So let me come back to the bond just a little bit. So the idea of the bond, it was said that I was the one that brought the bond up. The bond idea was brought up when we were talking about a lot of different projects, including the annex building for voting, and that was during strategic plan when Ms. Brock brought up, hey, if y'all are interested in doing this, here's an idea to build an annex building that would house some different things as we continue to grow with services, to house our voting, which is a whole nother issue that's got to be taken care of.
Let me explain that. We failed the audit from the federal government, is that right?
Because of the lack of security for our voting machines, because sitting in the hall is not wonderful.
Right.
So, but we are probably, I think, is there 43 counties? I forgot how many counties. But anyway, we were not the only one. Actually, more than 50% of them failed. But if we hadn't paid attention to why voting is important, and protection of voting material is important, then you're obviously not voting or don't care about it. Coming back to the bond. So that bond, when I brought up the best way, and I didn't make that statement, the best way if you're going to go and do all these projects together is to work on a bonding, because I knew what our financial plan was. I knew where we were going with this. And I kind of had an idea of what they were going to do on sewer. I didn't know exactly. And so we sat down, had a meeting in executive session. And now that we're pretty much going to do this, there's nothing really protected about the executive session on that. And we talked about what does this look like, and if we do this, and that our bonding attorneys were there. Everybody saw them in the audience. It's no secret that they were there, and they talked about some avenues for what we could bond up to, and I think it's like 47 million. And I don't say that to say that we need to bond $46 million before somebody goes and puts it out on Facebook. I say that to go that your bonding capacity is different, just like your borrowing power as an individual. Jeff, you can go out and buy $1 million home. Doesn't mean you can really should.
Yeah, right.
But if you have no expenses and no power bill and no car payment, whatever else, you can go borrow $1 million. Congratulations. But you don't live in a $1 million home.
Nope.
You live in a conservative home, same way like I do. So just because you can go out and borrow it doesn't mean that you should do this. So when it came back that we were going to do $25 million bond, I'm going, wait a second, why are we doing that when the exit 4 is now, keep in mind, we've already budgeted for up to almost 2, I'm going to call it sewer exit 1 and almost 2. So we've brought the pipe all the way up to the top of it. So now we just got to take it to 4. That cut the cost to get it to 4 down from I think 4 to like less than 3 million. And our development partners for Blue Ridge were still offering at that time to run that connector piece in there. We have enough cash on hand to do that. So why wouldn't we do that? And so when the bonds kind of brought up, well, this is why we're going to do this because we can use this money and put this here. It was really kind of confusing to me, even though I don't disagree that if we'd have started this way, it probably was a better way of doing it because we didn't have all this cash, but you had the state money, you had the ARPA money, and then you had some cash money that we were putting in the deal to run it to exit 1 and almost 2. That's what we need to just continue to say because there are people at exit.
Well, how about 1.5?
1.5, there you go. To where now you're pulling that cash back and you're putting that cash back in the budget for other economic development, okay, which I don't necessarily disagree with, but why aren't we talking about what we're planning on doing with the cash that we're pulling back out?
Exactly.
Why is it a little bit of, well, we're doing this because if this had been a year ago and I was doing this, they'd be ripping the walls down.
They'd be tearing it down.
They'd be tearing it down, telling me I've got this, funding up and he's hiding all this money and stuff like this. And if we're using it for economic development, great. We need to show people. Well, I don't think anybody's against grading Golden Corner and actually receiving some money off of that park.
Well, I think Golden Corners, and this goes back before you even were on council. Golden Corners Commerce Park has kind of been a thorn for many, many years.
It was a thorn when it was purchased.
It was a thorn when it was purchased. There was supposed to be a lot of development with it, and it just never materialized.
The proper way, if you go back in time, the best thing that would have ever happened if you were really, really interested in getting sewer to that area would have been to create some kind of sewer plant, a medium-sized sewer
that was
plant
already
out
talked
in that
about
area
too.
And fund it that way rather than piping the system. Now we have a great plant. It has some good capacity. We're going to have, guess what, with all this growth, we're going to have less capacity. And so, the sewer Joint Regional Sewer Authority is not wrong in some of the stuff they're throwing at the council right now going, y'all better, they're looking at us and I'm pointing to myself in your little camera because y'all are putting this stuff in place. Y'all better find a way to pay for it. And I appreciate Matt giving me a little props in his newsletter he releases out there saying that Mr. Davis brought up about funding for this stuff because, when I'm off this, most of the sewer we're putting in the ground is not going to need to be replaced. It better not need to be replaced in the next 4 years. But what about in the next 20, 30 years? So if we don't put stuff in place right now to cover maintenance stuff, what's that council going to do?
Well,
they're going to look at that and be like, look at those 5 people set up there.
But in the end, though, the council, Oconee County Council, isn't really responsible for the Joint Regional Sewer Water Authority.
We are not.
That goes to the municipalities of Seneca, Walhalla, and Westminster.
However, if their inability to process the sewer that we're bringing down from our industry falls back on us, then I think they have a right to look at this and go, and you're not paying anything for this because there is no money. I mean, somebody told me one day, oh yeah, they're making all this money in sewer.
They're not.
I've looked at every single book that they have. There is no money in the sewer business. There's money in the water and there's money in the power. But the sewer business is just one of those things that we got to have in there. So, as we're doing, whether it's transfer stations, where they're doing any of that stuff that have to replace that, these are only going to get more and more expensive. And it's, county's not in the sewer business. Well, it looks to me like we're very much in the sewer business. And not only that, we better hire a daggone project engineer to oversee this stuff, because right now we don't have anybody that's looking at it. Now, again, we've got some great contractors that are working on this. Moorhead is going to do a phenomenal job for us, and I trust them to do a great job. But who's looking at this project engineer stuff going
from the county aspect and protecting the county interest, and that's something that I really think needs to be discussed.
Right. So and I brought that up. Paul Kane's brought that up. Amanda's brought that up, but it hasn't been funded. So we got all these projects going in there, and not just in that. You kind of heard I heard the other night on Parks and Recreation that we got all these parks and stuff that council's taking in and we're funding, but we have one person taking care of like 19 different places.
Wow.
How's he do it? He doesn't.
Yes.
We're reactive.
Yeah.
So it's time for county
to be proactive
moving forward, so things are not so expensive moving forward. So I think there's some things within this bond that I believe that is proactive. And I think it can be, as long as the money is used right. And it doesn't get into this, we're going to run sewer here, and we're going.
I think
I'm trying to make sure. Somebody said, "Well, you're in this now," and I said, "I agree," but you almost. I mean, we always come back to the hey, you got to be in it to see it, Or I think we're back into the Pelosi statement again for some reason, but it's kind of like
pass it to find out what's in it,
and you're almost staying in here going like, "Here's the direction," and so I have found it very interesting that it's the finger pointing comes back to me of, well, Julian had this idea and Julian is doing this, and it's like, wait a second. So it's like, I think Mr. Hart threw something at me about exit 4, that the only reason I'm for exit 4 is because my cousin's on the board of Blue Ridge, which absolutely has nothing to do with that. My thing of exit 4 is Blue Ridge is not the only one that owns land up there.
That's correct.
There's 2 other developers that own land up there. Now, some of that is farmed. They lease that and run some soybeans and stuff off of there. But that whole area up there at Exit 4, everyone in this county has always known that Exit 4, sooner or later, is going to develop for economic development. I guess if you want to say that I'm for it, Exit 4 because of them owning that. I was before that, even before that occurred. My great thing about having a company like Blue Ridge up there is because they're not going to ask they're going to look at the whole spectrum of somebody coming in there. They're not going to say, oh, this property now is going to be $75,000 an acre. They're going to look at this and say, what's the power user? What we're going to do? Maybe there'll be a spec building built up there. So there's a lot of different things up there, but am I concerned about the bond and the money that it creates that comes back in there? Yes, because I don't believe that this council is really been forthcoming talking about the cash that's coming back. Now, the bond hadn't passed. The bond has not passed, but it's a single reading, and if truth be told, if you watch 1, 2, and 3 as it passed through, and our guy came up and said, I think it was the third one, and he said, hey, don't do this if you're not going to pass it, because if you don't pass it, chances are it'll drop your bond rating if you decide not to move forward with it. So by them going to New York and saying $25 million, council's going to pass a $25 million bond. What I want people to pay attention to is when the money comes back, what's the plan with that cash money? Because this will be, in my opinion, the largest amount of cash that we've put back into economic development. So is this council conservative and fiscally responsible to look at this and go, what's this investment going to be? How's it going to be? And how's it going to be used for that area? Or are we just going to run a bunch of pipes everywhere else? Because I think we better make sure somebody's going to hook into 4. Somebody's going to hook into almost 2, and somebody's going to hook into one. Because if you get a project online, how many projects have we run sewer to since I've been on there? Almost every single one of them in some way, shape, or form. We've either had to extend a sewer line out to them or something like that. It's just been part of the process, or it's been part of a fee in lieu of or special source revenue.
Right.
We don't have to go out there and just pipe sewers all up over the place. That'd be like you going out here and saying, hey, I'm going to buy 500 acres in Oconee County, and I'm just going to grade it and see what happens. We don't need to do that, because you need to let the developer or whoever's coming in here and say, well, I want this parcel, but the sewer is 45 feet away. So I guarantee you 45 feet away is not going to stop it. And that's my whole thing with Highway 11. You're down there on Highway 11. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
If you're on the other side of Highway 11, it's not so hard to get there. Okay? And I think everybody understands that. And I'm not trying to cast stones or whatever. And this whole thing is not about being ugly to anybody. And I've said that for the second time in this interview, because I want people to be real about their intentions. Because if I own land on Highway 11, I'd want sewer there too, because what the heck's it for? So, and I hope that land on Highway 11 develops, but I want people to be honest about it and honest about working to get it there, and say, do I think you need to pull off the vote? No, but I think you ought to probably put Heartland LLC in on your statement of economic interest, because I hope it develops. I mean, if that develops, there's a bunch of different land up in through there that should develop. If it's not, why are we running the sewer? Why are we running the sewer? Because I'm paying for it, you're paying for it, everybody in here's paying for it. And all my statement is you need to be honest. Do I think he should vote for it? Yeah, because I don't think his financial interest, is it more than anybody on council? Yes. Is it more than a lot of people here? Yes.
Yeah, but if the roles were reversed, Julian, if the roles were reversed, they would tar and feather you and hang you.
Yeah, I would, and I don't disagree with that. But my whole thing is, when I brought it up, he immediately attacked me and a family member of mine that has absolutely nothing to do with my political world, which I find it kind of amusing in a way, because him being on the board of, I think there's 12 people, 13 on that board of a great organization that's a good partner to this county, has nothing to do with this, which was interesting to get thrown back, rather than say, I do own land there. I do own land there. However, I've got a ethics opinion saying that I can vote on it. Great, no problem, no problem. All my reason is I hope Exit's wanting to flourish and develop, and we have hotels all down there, because if not, why'd we spend all this money?
It's a pipe of dreams.
Why did the state spend all their money on there if it's not going to develop? Yep. Sanctuary Point, I hope that whole area develops down there, because if it doesn't, we've wasted a lot of people's money.
Yeah, we have.
And if I said the other day, I said I'm not really a betting man, never been to Cherokee, but like if you roll up in there, and if it was my money, I'm putting my money on exit 4. And when sewer gets to exit 4 and we see what's happening, I think you're going to see your industry up on 4. You see a couple of hotels down on 2 and 1. I hope it pays the bills.
Yeah, but exit 4 is better developed, because you already have 2 develops in that area. Right. You've got the Love's truck stop. You've got another one. You've got developable property that's ready to go for somebody to come.
And I'll close with this and give you a chance to ask anything else. But there was talks about we are the only place that doesn't have sewer on 85, which is absolutely false. You obviously don't drive 85. Or we're the only undeveloped exit on 85. If you're in between, if you pass Anderson and you're going into Greenville all the way into Spartanburg, there's at least 4 or 5 exits that have nothing on them. Maybe it's because they don't have sewer, which is probably true. But sewer could get there some way, shape, or form, especially if you got $25 million in your hand. And I state this to go that we don't have to be the world of Livonia. Somebody said Cracker Barrel, and everybody was all pro Cracker Barrel, and the next thing I know, they quit posting about how wonderful Cracker Barrel was on those. Maybe there's Facebook posts came out they didn't like
We
it.
only have four miles, right?
So we
Yeah.
only have 4 miles on there, and if you go down and you look at topography, leaving Oconee County after exit 4, between us and the next Anderson County exit is some wonderful land. And all I'm telling Oconee County to do is be careful. When I heard about the partnership, this possible partnership, which is apparently no longer anymore, between us and Anderson County, I said, have y'all lost your mind?
Well, we've tried
Because
that
if you
before.
if you run that sewer line on the other side of Anderson, all of a sudden Anderson becomes a competitor. You can say whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to be in partnership together. Councils change just as they do at this county. And when you begin to bring another county in and give them a tool in your belt, which we have so many in Oconee County, you all of a sudden greed takes over, and the council goes, wait a second, we're not doing that agreement anymore.
Yeah. And we've had that happen
And
before.
we've had it happen
We've had
before.
it happen before, not more than 25, almost 30 years ago.
Same thing. We had Clemson trying to come over and take over Harwell Village.
And
take all-
had
take
y'all
all-
not went down there and it got
Yeah.
involved, I think that would have happened because Clemson, unfortunately, can only go one way.
Clemson
and that's
can
towards
only
us.
go one way, which is toward us. And not only were they after us, they were after some other land up through there. And every single person knew what needed to be done, and we went through, we worked it out, made them sign an agreement that if we did our fee in lieu of with them, that would lock them out of ever having to do that, and that shut the door on that.
And
Now,
understand, this has happened before. We lost that section in 1967. We lost Clemson University. You have to understand, Clemson University was in Oconee County. Old Stone Church, that whole area was in Oconee, and we lost it to Pickens County.
Yeah, but I think moving forward, the council needs to focus on what's important. And as an elected person, my thing is focusing on what truly is important. And my number one goal is my family. So I think there's no secret to that. I gave up a lot to live here. This is an awesome place. And I think we all need to really focus on what matters, and that's both sides. That's and I think you're seeing a council that is going, I was wrong about a lot of stuff, and maybe I was too. To where we're coming up there not to personally attack and feel like, hey, let's just go out and get a fist fight in the hall, to where going, I'm going to disagree with you, and I'm not going to forget the past. I'm not going to forget. I'm going to learn from the past, but I don't forget things, and I don't forget how people treated me. But we need to make sure as we're moving forward that everything we're doing is in the best interest of our families and our county and everything, because people are watching us. And I mean, for what happened in the last 8-9 months was embarrassing. And I thank God that we're headed in a direction, and maybe everybody's sitting here going, I made some mistakes, and I'm not going to forget them, and I'm not going to forget who said what, when, and where. But I'm not going to sit here and cast stones anymore, because it's getting old. It's getting old, and I don't know how people aren't wore out over it. So, the people are going to be, those people are going to be there. I thought the decorum overall in council this last Tuesday was great.
It was great.
Overall, I mean, there was a statement made to me by a person that made fun of me for wearing a pink shirt that was actually in representative of breast cancer, until he found out that the person that he believes in was also wearing the same pink shirt. Now, how about that? And so I'm like, are we living in a world where we attack somebody without even understanding who they are? And it was a shot, and he took it, and then, do I think he's apologetic for it? No, I don't think he's that way. But I just find it interesting that, you look at somebody, you look at the clothes they wear, they look at where they came from, and you judge them for that, but you don't know them. Mm-hmm. That group never, ever attempted to ever get to know me or anything like that.
That's right.
And there was a statement made on when the Journal posted that they created to hold me accountable. I'm not accountable to them. I'll tell them that right now. And I'm not accountable to that person that posted that, no matter what he says. I'm accountable to my family. I'm accountable to the Lord. I'm accountable to the citizens. But I think it's interesting that he used me to try to push their agenda when they're the group saying they're not with an agenda. I remember them backing candidates saying he's got a special agenda. I don't have any special agenda. That is a pretty special agenda. Mm-hmm. I agree with some of it, but at the same time, I'm like, y'all are wearing yourself out, getting in your group of 5 and 6 and patting each other on the back, because this job is not here to get a pat on the back. And if anybody's thinking about doing it because it's going to build them up and give them a pat on the back and people are going to invite you in, I feel sorry for you, because it's going to rip you apart. Mm-hmm. And you better get in here, and you better have some thick skin, and you better be willing to suck it up and actually find out what the facts are. Because when the facts hit, and you've seen it, y'all brought some stuff up, and me and I've disagreed with people on your show, and I've had conversation with people on your show. I've disagreed with certain things that they do, and I don't do this as this world of endorsement. Like, I don't think you ever been in my basement. I don't really have a basement. This is actually in my office here today. We go back into this whole world of, let's go in here and attack everything, because when I remember when Let's Talk was started, you had Lake Kiwi online long time ago, and we sponsored, and I'm glad
you're bringing that up.
I wanted to touch on this because it meant something to me to listen to these, how ludicrous these attacks are, because Lake Kiwi online was started a long time ago,
2018.
Yep. And when we started that stuff, I remember you called and said, hey, you're running some ads on some other stuff, you want to run some ads on here? And we did some talks and we did some conversations, and we had some great shows on there, had some great ads and stuff on there. And then nothing was ever said about that. Mm-mm. I don't even know most of these people, or the 3 of them that comment, I don't know where they came from, because they weren't here in 2015. So I guess I didn't need to be held accountable when I first started. I don't know, maybe just now. But, and I remember you said, hey, $500 sponsorship, this is what I'm doing for you and a couple other businesses. I said, great. I'm grateful to support you, move on. And Let's Talk Oconee came in, and you called me, and I said, hey, I don't do political talk radio. It's just one thing that I just stay away from. I'd be glad to be on your show, but I don't do political talk radio for anybody. It was not a shot at anything that you're doing on that. I think just as business owners, we probably kind of steer clear of that stuff. Now I'm a business owner that's in politics, just like a lot of business owners are. But, taking a shot at somebody, just like the same thing when people are out here goofing off and having fun, I sit back to look at the video when people used it to make fun of you, to call you crazy, or say that, we hanging out and getting in bubble baths together, which is, I don't think me and you would fit in a bubble bath, just saying.
No.
I sit there to go, like, the group will stoop to no level. There's no level too low to try to put their agenda forward. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of those people learn that. And I know I got a guy that talks to me now that commented on some of those posts that was very derogatory toward me and my family, because he was part of that group. Mm-hmm. And so I challenge you and your team and your Let's Talk Oconee, don't stoop to the level that where they were at. Because it's time for us to really look around and say, this is what's important. This is what this, and you got members on your team that it's personal. And I get it's personal because it sucks.
Well, for me, I let it go in one ear out the other, because I know at the end of the day, I'm going to be here. I don't know where they're going to be. I was born and raised here. I grew up here. I've been involved more years with Oconee County than certain these that just walked in and started getting involved in 2020. So for me, I'm going to be here. It doesn't bother me anymore. I let it go in more, and sometimes I have to laugh about it, because I know in the end that some of the stuff that they've said, that they've tried to do.
The Halloween pictures were good. I thought the Halloween pictures were good.
Yeah. Oh, you talking about all four of us?
Yeah, that was good.
That was. And it's all four of us.
Hey, that's all good. That's
We're going to salute that,
it's
too.
like the time. It's like the time that I had the Journal did the cartoon of me. Man, I got that thing framed. It's just part of this. It's part of this job.
It's
part of this
political.
job. And the thing is, as long as we're actually accomplishing where we're trying to head and not doing photo ops in the video, it's kind of like one of those things is where, here and, stuff like that. So, I look at this stuff to go, when you put down on paper what you do, you're not a title. Because once you leave this earth, what you leave behind is your legacy. What is your legacy? And I say that I don't want people to go, you make fun of me all you want, it's no problem. Make fun of my shirt, make fun that I'm bald or onion head or whatever else you want to be. but at the end of the day, it's your legacy that you're creating. When you're not there anymore, what did you leave behind? What's people going to remember you for? What's people going to, in this community, when that name gets said, and I told somebody the other day when I was talking to them on the street at one of the local festivals, he told me that, now people don't like you. And I said, well, I imagine the people that you're running with don't like me. And that's okay. That's okay. If you think everybody likes you, you're wrong.
Well, I just appreciate you allowing us to use your basement for the show.
Yeah.
I mean,
This is my corner office suite here for, but yeah, I just, I got a blue tablecloth. You can't see it, but I don't have the.
I need a chandelier in here, please.
But I was very specific. When you talked to me about being on your show, that I didn't want to become part of. Your talk show can be your talk show. I wanted it to be, county where we're headed forward, and I do think, even with people's disagreement, that this council that's sitting there. Is it the greatest council we've had? No. I mean, maybe the greatest council we've had is hopefully out there, in front of us. But I hope and I know, and I said this in that town hall, more people are paying attention. So I am appreciative when that question got out there. There's people that I'd never spoken to before that were concerned, that talked to me about what somebody was saying to them, or they brought me a notebook or something that somebody had created on me or something like that, that were talking about some of the concerns in here and some of the lies and stuff, and said, I needed to go and sue them. And I said, I sue them for what? Their opinion? Because at the end of the day, everybody has an opinion, even though I may consider it very demeaning toward me. You have your right to have your opinion. The problem is when that group goes in there and is trying to control the county. And I think what you've seen recently is where people have gotten a little smarter, sitting up there as an elected official and said, y'all back up. Mm-hmm. Let me do my job. And I think that's what I saw in September.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
And I'm appreciative of that, because to each his own, every single person that's sitting up there as a 5-member council is responsible of themselves.
Yep. All right, we've joined with Julian Davis. I want to thank you for being on the show, and we look forward to anything we can do for you and hearing more as we get closer and closer. Of course, as you mentioned, you're running for re-election coming up for 2024. So again, thank you for joining us here on Let's Talk Oconee. I'm Jazzy Jeff, and we will see you later.